All right, and welcome back to RobManWorld, and very exciting, I have a guest. Unbelievable, it took a bit of time for our people to work out the details, but you made it.
My people talking to your people and all of that. But I gotta say, I'm absolutely loving this. I came over and I'm like, this is fantastic. Like, you have your own show, and I can just drop by and then just get the hell out. Bye, have fun editing.
This is called zero effort videos.
It is, it works out absolutely perfectly. So I like this. I think this is so much fun. I'm glad you're doing it. And a lot of people have said that your games look a lot like my games. Our childhoods were exactly the same.
They were. I mean, honestly,
exactly.
we hung out for the what we call the formative years of our collecting.
Definitely.
And we both just played them the same way because we both want to just walk in once in a while and stare at the wall and just...
But we like the same games. I
Yes.
mean, it's so strange. You got your Saturn stuff, your Genesis stuff, your Master System stuff.
Yeah.
You know, PS1, your Neo Geo, small Neo Geo stuff. But no, that's great. But we had such a similar childhood.
Yes.
Of video games and stuff like that. So a lot of fun. Yeah.
And so, no, this is actually my place because a lot of comments on the last video, people were like, "Did you just go to John's?" No, this is mine this time.
Yeah. Every time I walk in, I'm just like, it feels eerie. I'm like, is that no? This is your place. Have that a little bit. Yeah.
So, but here we are, and actually, today I wanted to talk to you about something that I don't think I've ever heard you talk about.
Oh, really?
Which is interesting because it's been, we've talked about everything over the years.
Yeah.
What got you into playing JRPGs? What was your first foray into it, and why did you get into it?
It's interesting because it all comes back to you and your family.
Really?
Because I hung out with Rob's brother before I met you.
Yeah.
You know, because you were the younger brother, even though it was like only 3-4 years difference. Back then it's like huge difference. But I hooked up with your brother, not that way, but just to play Dungeons and Dragons. And we had a really good time, and I loved playing D&D. I didn't understand it all. Your brother and all his friends, they really understood the rules. I didn't get it. I just wanted to have an adventure and have some fun. And then that kind of linked me into opening up Nintendo Power and going, hey, what was this game? Dragon Warrior? What's this game's coming out?
Okay.
But it also, before it got to Dragon Warrior, having my own experience, it was down the road, I have discussed it, was seeing Phantasy Star.
Oh, okay.
And on all of that. With your brother was over there secretly hiding over at the Kato's place. Seeing these incredible RPGs that they brought back from the States for the Sega Master System. And it was like, what it was for me was I could have that D&D experience, but I didn't have to be with anybody else. I just have it at home. And I like that. Because all that anybody did in D&D was argue. And kill each other in the first 5 minutes.
That does need to be discussed, is the fact that when my brother and his friends would play D&D, they would spend about an hour and a half making characters and then arguing about whether or not they were allowed to use those stats. And then they would try and start a game and they'd argue about the rules for the rest of the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was frustrating as hell to me. And so, basically, I saw the Master System and I got to experience it secondhand through everybody else. Yeah. And then I never got a Master System. I asked my parents for one. They're like, no, we're not getting it. We get a Nintendo. So that's when I discovered Dragon Warrior. And I played that. And it was a poor man's Phantasy Star. It was. It's like, that terrible music that you remember so well.
Wow, 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 brown, 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 brown.
That's haunted. We're sorry about that, but that has been ingrained into our brains since 1988, and it still won't leave.
It will never go.
We're trying to exercise it. It's not working at all. And so I was playing it as like, oh my god, it was just combat after combat after combat. But there's a little bit of adventuring and combat after combat. So that's how I kind of got into it. And so I enjoyed it. And later on, I got the sloppy seconds of everybody's, buying their copies of Phantasy Star later on and stuff like that, and E's and all that kind of stuff. But it was really that summer was like, it's the formative summer of my life, 1988. That's what made me who I am, unfortunately. It was just like,
I would say fortunately, thank you.
So what got you into RPGs?
Now, you did.
Oh.
So back in the 80s, when I had my NES, I played Dragon Warrior, and it was the only RPG I actually played through back in the early days.
Did you rent it?
I must have. No, I bought a used copy at Willow, and I played through it, and I played all the way through it, and I was like, But I was such an action gamer. I wasn't used to, you have to look at things and talk to people and get clues and write them down. It was such a foreign concept to me, and my attention span was about that big. These days it's this big. Back then it was that big.
Press a button to go downstairs.
Right? So I was just like, it wasn't for me. Like, I finished it and it was, enjoyable, but at the time I couldn't understand.
Here's a question, because you always wanted to play D&D with your brother.
Absolutely.
So wasn't this kind of, you didn't correlate them as being the same kind of idea?
No, because with Dungeons and Dragons, it was someone telling a story and you giving your piece to it, but it was people talking, using your voice. That to me, and the social aspect of that, was what I really wanted to try. Because I read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings all the time as a kid, right? I've reread them and reread them. So I wanted to have that kind of a storytelling experience that I could with other people.
Right.
That was what was drawing me towards it.
Oh, fascinating.
So sitting by myself and just reading and pressing buttons to look at things and walk downstairs, for me, my patience was like, do something! So
for me, I didn't have to hear all that arguing as you were talking about. It was great. Yeah.
I missed the arguing. I wanted this game to yell at me or something. I don't know.
Right.
To tell me I couldn't do that. But,
yeah.
And then when we started hanging out,
Right.
you told me about your experiences with RPGs, and that was what shifted my view, because I really
You can see my passion.
I could see your passion in it, and I think also because I had grown and I'd like to say matured at least a little bit, but and to where I had the patience, and then I could get into the story, and the games have progressed because we were Super NES just starting edge of the PS1 era when we were hanging out.
Yes, indeed.
So I saw Final Fantasy, North America's Final Fantasy 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Through you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And some of the other games, the Super NES role-playing games, Legend of Mana and stuff like that.
Right.
And got to understand your perspective on it, and it made sense at that point. And so then I had the patience to play them and love them.
Yeah.
And then the PS1 era came in, and seeing those.
I was just about to say, it's interesting that when we started hanging out, there wasn't that explosion that Final Fantasy VII was about to create of RPGs that would be like a floodgates would be open, which was awesome.
Yes.
But we were in kind of a small time where like Final Fantasy III would come out, then you wait a year.
Yeah.
Then you get Chrono Trigger, and you wait a while, and then Earthbound.
There was these little nuggets that were tossed to you. They have a little taste.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a little bit more, and then when the PS1 hit, and then boom, because then Final Fantasy VII, we sat in your art room, and we were talking about this with the anniversary of it and everything else.
Yeah.
That picture of Midgar that you had cut out from your game fan,
right?
And we would just sit there and stare at it.
Yeah.
And just, oh my God, how cool is this?
I don't think people know that I used to have an art room.
Oh, yeah, they may not.
My parents had a nice house, and they gave me one room where I could just draw in, and I just put anime posters everywhere. And all that. So that's where he saw the Midgar poster. We would hang out in that room all the time and just talk video games all the time.
We'd go make tea in the kitchen down the hall.
Yeah.
And then we'd come back in, and we'd just stare at the posters and talk video games. There's stacks of game fans in there, and your New Type magazines were in there.
Yeah.
And we'd just look at those and talk about games, and you'd draw and sketch.
Yeah.
And you were making comics on and off. And
and then we had our friend Satan would drop by and just read all of my magazines all the time, all my books, and then leave.
And the odd little nugget of wisdom, like that Parasite Eve, it's fucking weird.
Oh, yeah, that was his big claim to fame. His claim to fame.
He wasn't wrong.
Yeah, oh, no.
I do give him that.
It was kind of weird. So you kind of like, so Final Fantasy VII, when did you start like going, okay, I'm going to buy some RPGs? What was that kind of experience?
I think one of the first one that really just sucked me right in was Grandia.
Oh, yes.
So, because I would sit and play them with you, and I loved that because we'd pass a controller back and forth, and I'd level grind with you.
Yeah.
And that's what started that for me, was that I'd get the little taste, because I could sit there with you, and it was the mix of the social experience and the game.
Right, yeah.
Grandia, when it came out, there was something about it. There was something about that game that was
time period.
But also the way that the story developed from such a humble little beginning with a bunch of kids that would have been us.
Yeah.
Playing with sticks and pot lids and being swords and shields and everything, but then having them get drawn into this massive adventure.
Yeah, it's great.
Was so beautiful and spoke to me so much that game I played, and that was when I lived in Quesnel.
Right.
And all I had was time for that.
Yeah.
And I literally just
You kind of depressed being up there, so that game was like a little bright sunshine.
Oh God, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I played right through that thing and loved every minute.
And we won't say that ending. Isn't that like I love that ending?
So beautiful, such a great ending.
I've said it before. That's when I was leaving my parents' house. My parents' basement was the last game I beat My parents' basement.
Jeez,
The era was over. And that ending, I stood there, and I had a cigarette at the time because I smoked. I had a little tear in my... Man, what times were in this basement?
If that basement could talk.
Oh, Jesus. Get the hell out of here. Get out. Get some sun.
I tell.
Get some sun. Get out of here. Yeah, 100%, you know, because we spent so much time in that basement playing RPGs.
We
my
lived
God.
in that basement.
Yeah.
I mean, it was honestly, it was like Seinfeld because the door was always open.
Yeah.
So we just walk in.
Yeah.
I lived 5-minute bike ride up the road.
Yeah.
So every morning I'd get up, I'd come down to your place, I'd put on tea, I'd wake you up with tea.
Yeah, you're a good friend, you know,
like a proper gent.
I was hungover back then. I had my cigarette going, put on the tea. Yeah.
I was practically like your butler back then. Tea, sir. Good morning.
No.
Should you like your wake up call?
It really was. You coming over, you want to have tea as well. You want to hang out. And you're like, the only way we're going to hang out is if I get you out of bed.
That was
not
the
get out of
truth.
bed. I know, yeah, for sure. Yeah, many great times playing RPGs in that basement. I remember for Grandia. Remember the big speakers I had? I mentioned this before.
Oh my God, yes.
I remember cranking it.
Oh,
I got the
God.
demo of Grandia, and I cranked the music so loud that the windows was shaking on that basement. And it was a pretty big basement.
Oh,
The
it
windows
was.
And I remember my mother at 11 o'clock at night going, John, turn it down. And I remember turning it up.
Oh, your poor mom. We were such terrible children.
Yeah, I know. We were kind of like, yeah.
Waking her up at all hours.
Because sometimes on Fridays, Saturdays, we'd be drinking till 4 a.m. down there and getting loony. But I mean, maybe
a little bit.
Just a couple of times.
This is just once or like always.
And you know, I still have good memories of that, leaving that basement. And I remember everything was packed up, and you and Satan came over, our friend Satan. And I remember watching Mystery Science Theater,
The movie,
as and everything's packed up and drinking, and we were playing Magician Lord and the Neo Geo too.
The infamous Magician Lord.
Yeah, that was set too hard.
Oh, and we didn't know.
So we were doing the highest difficulty.
But we still got to the final boss.
Yeah, but we couldn't get past
Look, the final boss level, which was basically a boss run of every final
Yeah,
boss.
it was crazy.
Oh, man.
Those are good times in that basement. And that was it. That was it for that basement after that. That was done. The basement was over. And we were both kind of leaving that, era and all of that. But man, Grandia and all those RPGs are so fantastic.
And I think that basement was also a big part of, well, for me, that basement was a big part of my getting into JRPGs.
Oh, yeah. You can escape it because you'd come over and Wild Arms would be playing. It's like, this is what's happening.
What a terrible way to live a life, eh? And that is actually something that I want to talk about another time is the joy of being a bum in the late 90s.
Oh, that's a great
We're going to talk about that another time.
That's a great one to talk about.
Because that was our life. Basically, once I first ran into you and we started hanging out, it was one neither of us had responsibilities or jobs. All we had was games and time.
And beer and somehow cigarettes as well.
Who knew?
I don't know how we had all those things. We're very lucky.
I think it was the beer and cigarette tree you had in the backyard.
Yeah, just kept growing it over and over.
Picking them and bringing them in.
Some players like today. Thank you. Some Demore. Oh, what about some Demore? Come on. Yeah, take the tree. I've had enough of this.
Every once in a while, on a special Saturday, it would grow a little black package of JPS.
Oh, those were the best cigarettes back in the day. They were fantastic. Yeah, for sure. So
that's, I mean, there you go. How we got into the JRPGs and we're still stuck with them.
Yeah, we're still in our parents' basement. Let me out of here! Let me out of here!
Now I get to have kids who are going to be stuck in my basement with all of this, and they're going to hate every minute of it.
Oh, they're going to hate this.
Yeah, who would want this?
I know, nobody would want this. Not at all.
What, you mean it's not an app for $18.95? What the hell?
I know, look at this treasure trove for your kids to play in. It's
That's
amazing.
Right. And the best part is I never let them come down here. Because this is Daddy's toys.
Yeah, they would destroy all of this, I think. Yeah.
But guys, well, thanks for coming along with us, and thank you for coming all the way over here.
Of course.
Fantastic.
I love doing this. It's great. I get to leave now.
See, so for all the people that were asking if I was going to get guests on the show, look at this, I did it.
Yeah, and you're going to get other guests too, which is going to be really cool.
Absolutely. It's going to be you in a funny hat.
I can do that. I got the funny hat.
We will make it happen. But guys, thanks for joining us, and share some of your memories of RPGs or what got you into them in the comments below. That'd be great. I always love to see that stuff. And otherwise, we will see you on the next one.